Appeals, February 7th, 2017. My name is Jay Abansky, Planning and Zoning Administrator, and we're going to be calling to order the Board of Zoning Appeals organizational meeting for 2017 at 7 o'clock. First order of business will be electing of a chairman for the year. Do we have any nominations from the board?
I nominate Mr. Dempsey for chairman.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? No discussion. I'd like to take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passing unanimously. Congratulations, Chairman Dempsey. Would you like to take over for the nomination for your vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Mr. DeCilio. We have a second?
I'll second Mr. DeCilio.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's five.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. First one I won out of 3. Okay, Dan, it's my turn.
All right, we're ready.
Okay, today is February 7th, and the public hearing of the Stratford Board of Zoning Appeals will come to order. To hear these petitions, advertised for this session, for those of you who are not familiar with our process, each petitioner or their designated representative will present their case to the board. When they have concluded, board members will then have an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. I will then ask if there is anyone who wishes to speak in favor or opposition to the petition. We ask all petitioners to speak clearly and directly into the mic. After all the petitions have been heard, we will then recess to our administrative session. Interested parties are welcome to stay, but however, only board members and staff will be allowed to speak at that time. Please be advised that clapping, shouting, or any way of expressing opinions to this for an application will not be allowed or tolerated. And please shut your cell phones off or put them on vibrate. Thank you very much. Mr. Greger, would you like to take petition number 1 off the table?
Petition number 1, 1526 Stratford Avenue. Petition of 2 roads seeking waivers of setbacks from wetlands, maximum building height, side yard, and parking to expand a specialty brewery in a MA/CA district. The hardship is existing wetlands on lot.
Okay, please come forward.
Who gets the letters to
Just give that handsome young man over there.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Neil Hauk from Neil Hauk Architects in Darien.
Your last name, please.
Yes, H-A-U-C-K. I am representing the applicant, 2 Roads Emeritus, this evening. With me tonight are my associate, Brian O'Connor, Steve McAllister, a civil engineer with McCord Associates in Wilton, Connecticut, and Peter During, who's one of the founding partners of the 2 Roads Brewing Company. 5 years ago, 2 Roads Brewing purchased the U.S. Baird Building, an abandoned factory building with historical significance, and gave it new life. It is now a thriving and growing establishment that has made its mark on the craft brewing industry, both locally and regionally. In the process, it also has embraced the town of Stratford and its rich history. And if you go in the brewery, I hope you've all been there, you'll see pictures of the history of Stratford and Sikorsky, and really they have embraced it with even some of the names of their beers. As a next step in their growth cycle, 2 Roads is proposing to construct a new 25,000 square foot sour and barrel aging brewery on a recently purchased 2.5-acre plot of land that is adjacent to their existing facility. It will feature a 50-barrel Rolette brew house, fooders, a cool ship, and storage for 2,000 wood barrels. It will also house a tasting room, a commercial kitchen, and a dining room for hosting special public and private events. We believe that this new facility, together with the existing brewery and the new streetscape enhancements proposed by the town, will create an attractive entrance to the town of Stratford from the west. In addition, we believe that this new specialty brewery will create a tourist destination. Brewcations are increasingly popular these days, and by having these two interconnected facilities, we will increase the already significant number of out-of-towners coming to Stratford, which will be a boon for the entire business community. For perspective, I'd like to let you know that almost 700 people from out of state came to Two Roads' Oktoberfest this past year, and they have over 100,000 people visit the brewery each year. So it's a significant number of people that come in from out of the area. I want to point out that the proposed scope of site work for this project includes cleaning up the existing wetlands area by way of removing existing litter, removing dead plant materials, restoring the wetlands with native species, reclaiming a portion of the wetlands along the northern edge of the building envelope, and creating a new wetlands area to replace the reclaimed area. All work related to the existing wetlands have been dealt with separately via an application to the Inland Wetlands Commission, Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency officially. That application was unanimously approved last Wednesday night, so we've gotten the IWWA approvals. In terms of the existing conditions, the existing property is currently underdeveloped and falls within two zoning districts. The southern portion of the property abuts Stratford Avenue and falls within the CA district. Everything you see from this orange line down, that's in the CA district. The northern portion of the property abuts the Metro North Railroad right-of-way and falls within the MA district. The existing topography drops in such a way that the northern portion of the property is approximately 10 feet below the elevation that's closest to Stratford Avenue. So our buildable area is about 10 feet above the wetlands area. It drops back there. And as I said before, almost all of the northern portion of the property has been determined to be a marginal inland wetland. I also want to point out that when Two Roads purchased the property, it immediately, at the time it contained contaminated soil materials, and Two Roads immediately went through the process of removing and disposing of all of that material off-site following current EPA regulations. So the site has been cleaned. In terms of the variance we're requesting, we're requesting 4 variances. The first requests a variance to Section 3.14 of the zoning regulations to allow construction within the 50-foot required setback from inland wetlands. The second requests a variance to Section 7.4.1 to allow a building height maximum of 44.17 feet in lieu of the 35-foot building height maximum stipulated for the CA portion of the district. The third requests a variance to Section 10.2.2 of the Stratford zoning regulations to allow a minimum side yard of 8.96 feet in lieu of the 15-foot minimum side yard requirement stipulated for the MA zone, which is the back portion of the property. And the fourth and final variance is to Section 12.5 to allow us to provide 33 parking spaces in lieu of the 107 required parking spaces that were calculated for the various uses within the building. As in conformance with the zoning regulations. So in terms of the hardship, we believe that the fairly large inland wetlands area situated on the northern portion of the property creates a hardship that prevents us from developing the property in such a way that it would conform fully to the regulations. Specifically and simply, if the wetlands did not exist and we had the entire site to work with, we would be able to avoid all 4 of these variances. And so starting with the first variance, obviously, if we had no wetlands on the property, we wouldn't have a problem with the 50-foot setback from the wetlands. Secondly, in terms of the building height variance we're requesting, if we didn't have wetlands on the property, we would be able to shift the entire building back so that it would fall entirely into the MA zone. The MA zone has a maximum building height of 60 feet. So our building height of 44.17 feet would be well below the MA zone. So it's only this little portion of the building that encroaches into the CA zone where we don't meet the height regulations. If we were able to just push it back that far, at this point would be beyond the red line, we wouldn't need a height variance. Again, due to the wetlands, we can't do that. Regarding the third variance, which is the minimum side yard, once again, if we didn't have wetlands on this portion of the property, we would have all of this area to work with. We would reconfigure the building so that we wouldn't have to encroach into the side yard setback with our loading dock. And then regarding the fourth and final variance, once again, if we didn't have wetlands, extensive wetlands on this portion of the property, we would be able to shift the building back and we'd have a lot more room for parking in this section of the site. So in summary, this is a request to develop an underutilized and uncared for piece of property in a way that is consistent with the intent of the Stratford Plan of Conservation and Development. We believe our design for the proposed sour and barrel aging brewery will be iconic in nature, will create synergies with the entire business community, and will provide an attractive addition to the Stratford Avenue streetscape. Given the proven track record that Two Roads has created over the past 5 years, given the clear hardship that exists, and given the fact that the proposed project poses no adverse effects on the surrounding community, we respectfully request that you grant these variances.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody like to speak in favor of this petition?
We have
Oh, you guys got any questions? I'm sorry.
That's pretty quick, Mr. Chairman.
Question?
Any questions? Mr. Hoyter.
I have a question. I know that you were approved by the Wetlands Commission,
Yes, sir.
but there was a condition that there was going to be a restoration plan that was going to be submitted.
Correct.
For the restoration of the new wetland. Do you have any idea when that's going to occur?
We're working on it. So I can't give you an exact timetable. We have reached out to Bill Kenny, who's a well-respected soil scientist in the area. And Bill, we're going to be meeting with him early next week. And so Bill's going to be involved with that. The Wetlands Board specifically chose to separate the two.
Right.
To give us the approval to build the building.
Right.
As this first phase, with the understanding that we would come back with the plan for restoring the wetlands as a phase 2 and treat that as a separate application.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any more questions? Mr. DiCilio.
So I understand you're seeking a parking waiver of 77 spaces. So you're required to have 100, but you only have 33. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I also have in Mr. Hibansky's comments that it says the adjacent property will and I'm confused, it says it has 120 spaces, which fills up, by the way. I've been to the brewery and I've enjoyed many a pint. But it gets very crowded, and it says in this notes that an additional 100 parking spaces, quote, to be, end quote, leased when UI substation is complete. Is that lease in effect?
Yeah, I'd like to address
And,
that.
and it hasn't been submitted to the board?
Peter, is the lease in effect?
We currently have a lease with UI. It will be suspended while they're doing construction, and the intention and the plans call for a 100-foot wide swath on the west side of the brewery where the UI land is located, which will provide us over 100 spaces when the substation is completed.
Okay, and without getting into the financial terms of your lease, which is private, can you share with the commission the length of your lease or any options you would have? Is it a 1-year lease? Is it a 10-year lease? Is it because we're granting a pretty big waiver, and I want to know that these spaces are going to exist 2 years down the road and beyond.
The current lease we have in effect was structured as a rolling evergreen 1-year arrangement, and that was because they intended to build the substation. Now that they are building the substation, we will enter into a separate agreement, which will be a new one specifying the new plot of property that they will lease to us. The specific terms have not yet been negotiated.
Okay.
But they did it for us, basically.
Okay, then one follow-up just on parking. There's a lot of barrel aging in here, but there was also either a restaurant or a tasting room. Can you explain to me, let's assume that parking, which is kind of far away, didn't exist. On this site specifically, I know the site is restricted because of the wetlands, and that's the hardship, but tell me, or make an argument to the board why these 33 spaces will be more than adequate when you have a party in this tasting room and whatever else you plan on doing.
Yeah, I'll address that. So eventually, there will be 100 spaces in the UI lot. There are currently 144 spaces in the main brewery lot.
Oh, 145.
And then we're adding 33 to our new building lot. In addition, we were planning to add some spaces here, which that's why my initial narrative to you had a higher number of parking spaces that we were providing, but then we realized that those were not on site.
Okay.
So we took them off. We will be adding those as well. That's about another 32, I think. Plus, I want to also point out that they do have shuttle buses that meet the train on weekends to bring people to the brewery. So there is that option as well. And in terms of the production employees in the new brewery itself, they're planning to be 5 of them at most, and no more than 7 staff in the tasting room. Those people will all be parking in the main building, and they'll sort of be operating back and forth from the main building. So those 5 employees, the production employees, aren't going to be there all the time. They're only going to be there at certain times, and then they'll go back to the main building. So we believe that the times when the tasting room gets most crowded, or if they have a specialty, they want to have the commercial kitchen, if they end up having a private party or a public party, that those times are going to be in the evenings when they won't be having any production of the beer. So all of those spaces will be devoted to, the people who come to the tasting rooms.
Okay, any more questions?
I
Mr.
just
Gregor?
got one. Is the fire marshal okay with the height of this building?
The fire marshal did review this, and I think he's okay with it. Let me see if I can find his comments here. I believe I have them. Yes, Brian Lampert said, "I have reviewed the proposed documents for the new building. and see no reason to delay moving forward. I will work with the designers at the time of permitting to address any issues that may need attention.
And that open space behind the existing building, the proposed building, the wetlands,
Yes.
what is that gonna be? You're gonna put grass there or
Well,
bushes or?
it's going to get cleaned out. We have some pictures of it that, you know, we had a lot of litter and bottles and things. And so we're going to clean it up. We're going to plant it with native species. We would like to, if possible, plant some fruit trees that we could use to grow fruit for some of the special beers.
Sure.
They were talking, Brad was talking about putting some of his beehives out there, because he's got them in the present facility. And we would love to, if possible, find a way to be able to create a walkway through it that would allow people to walk through without damaging it. So that's something that we'd have to deal with as part of our approvals. But our goal was from the back of the building, where we have the tasting room and the dining room, we want to be able to look out and see something that really looks nice. You know, so,
Right, I agree.
Okay, well, any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, would anybody like to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody like to speak against this petition? Hearing none, do I have a motion to close? Mr. Hoydick? Paul? Okay. Mr. DeCilio, would you like to take off number 2?
116 Avon Street, petition of James Povinelli and Connecticut Saw and Tool LLC, seeking waiver of the side and rear yard requirements, required parking spaces, and landscape buffer between any residence district to construct an industrial building in an MA district. Hardship is identified as size and irregular shape of the lot.
Thank you, sir.
Evening, Madam Secretary, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Mr. Hibansky. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott, Dunn with offices at 1656 Main Street. I'm here this evening on behalf of James and Kim Povinelli and Connecticut Saw and Tool LLC, which is located at 140 Avon Street in Stratford. With me is Jim and Kim's son, Dan, who has been operating the facility with his father for a number of years. At this time, I'd like to submit the certificates of mailing and make reference to a folder of exhibits to which I will be referring during the course of my presentation. The first 8 of which are photographs, which I'd like to take you through. Exhibit 1 is the Povinelli's business building known as Connecticut Saw and Tool. That's located at 140 Avon Street, 2 lots up from the subject premises. Exhibit number 2 is another photo of the front of that building. Exhibit 3 is a photo of the space between that building and the 3-family house that is located between the existing Connecticut Saw and Tool building and the lot upon which we are seeking to build a new building, as I will describe in a minute. Exhibit 4 is the 3-family house that's between my client's 2 properties. The Povinellis own all 3 lots, by the way, and all 3 lots are zoned light industrial. Exhibit 5 is a photo of the lot that is the subject of this application. The address is 116 Avon Street. Exhibit 6 is a photo showing the end of Avon Street. And as you can see, on both sides of the street, their building is on the right, 140. And then beyond it and to the left, you've got mostly light industrial use. Exhibit 7 is a photo of a light industrial building that's located immediately across the street from my client's property. And Exhibit 8 is a photo of 119 Avon Street, which is located directly across the street from my client's property. Notice that there are two houses on one lot in this photograph. Now, Exhibit 9 is the site plan of the Avon Street area in the immediate vicinity of my client's property. Now, you'll see in the middle there, I have 3 lots upon which there is yellow marking, outlined in orange. The outline in orange means that those lots are zoned light industrial, and you can see significant other light industrially zoned property in the immediate neighborhood. The reason why the yellow stripe is in the middle of those 3 lots is to identify those parcels as belonging to my client. So the whole site is surrounded by light industrial property with the exception of the end of the street on the right, which is still zoned RM1. Don't ask me why. It's been that way forever. All of the property around it has been zoned RM1 over the years, but for some reason, the owners of that property have never come in for rezoning, but it doesn't really have an impact on us. So the 3 lots that have the yellow stripe through the middle of it is our property. The larger lot to the right is where the existing building is located at 140 Avon Street. The narrow lot in the middle is 128 Avon Street, where the 3-family house is located, and the second largest lot to the left is 116 Avon Street, which is the subject of this application. This is an application for variances, as indicated. 4 variances in particular. One is a minimum side yard from 25 feet to 24 feet. Second is a minimum rear yard from 19.83 feet to 7.8 feet. The third is the width of the landscape buffer adjacent to residential zone from 12 feet to 6 feet. And finally, a waiver of parking from 14 spaces to 10 spaces. Now, Exhibit 10 is a site plan that was submitted with the original application. You're going to be getting another site plan in a minute, which is a little bit different than this, but I wanted to show you the one that we submitted originally. The property consists of a 13,152 square foot vacant lot immediately adjacent to 128 Avon Street and 140 Avon Street, both of which properties, as I indicated, are also owned by my client. The plan is to construct a 5,600 square foot, 1-story light industrial building on this lot, which building will be used in conjunction with the existing operation at Connecticut Saw and Tool. They are bursting at the seams at that location. They need warehouse space. They have no place else to go. They need this building in order to maintain their operation in Stratford. If they can't do this building, they're going to have to look somewhere else, and that would be a tragedy. The new building will have 10 parking spaces. Now, the property at 128 Avon is a 3-family house which is rented to tenants. However, as my client's business expands in the future, that house will be raised, and the light industrial buildings at 140 Avon Street and 116 Avon Street will be connected into one structure spanning the 2 buildings. So ultimately, we're planning on building a light industrial building on all 3 lots, with the building on the right at 116, the building on the left at 140, and an addition in between connecting the 2 lots. Now, Connecticut Saw and Tool were started by Jim and Kim Povanelli, both of whom live in Stratford and were products of the Stratford school system, both having graduated from Bunnell High School. They have three children, one of whom, Dan, who I've introduced to you, works with them in the business. All three children were also educated in Stratford school system, two of them matriculating at St. Joe's and one at Bunnell High School. The family has owned Connecticut Saw and Tool for 43 years. And for all of those years, the business was located in Stratford. For the first 16 years of the business, Connecticut Saw and Tool was located on Barnum Avenue Cutoff. And the last 27 years, it was located on Avon Street, where it is now. The company employs 20 persons and will hire about 5 more to work in the new building. Connecticut Saw and Tool services woodworking shops in 5 states, including New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. It provides service and maintenance to expensive woodworking equipment. Because of its specialized nature, the company has done well over the years, even in the economic downturn that occurred subsequent to 2008. Now, as you can see from the photos, the Povinellis are good neighbors to Avon Street. They keep their property in meticulous condition and get along well with their neighbors. As you can also see from the colored assessor's map, Exhibit 9, the light industrial zone surrounds the applicant's property on 2 sides, and the approval of this application would allow a longtime Stratford citizen and business to remain in town without creating any prejudice to the neighborhood. Now, Jay's comments, I want to address Jay's comments. He states, the proposed development is consistent with the type of development in an MA zone. He then points out that the proposed 1-foot waiver on the western property line appears to be negligible, but that this waiver, coupled with the reduction in the minimum 12-foot setback buffer to any residence, increases the potential impact of these variances on the abutting residential use. To resolve this, Jay suggests it would be preferred to have the landscape buffer of 12 feet to be retained and eliminate the additional parking spaces provided along the property line to the west. It was conveyed to zoning staff that the proposed development is incidental to the main facility along 140 Avon Street. The parking spaces provided to the west of the proposed structure may not necessarily be needed, as existing parking at 140 Avon Street may be sufficient. The board may choose to inquire with the applicant regarding this matter to better preserve the quality of life for the residents on Avon Street. Now, in regards to those comments by Jay, Exhibit 11 is a revised site plan, increasing the width of the buffer area between our proposed building and the residential property located to the west at 96 Avon Street. As you can see, we've made that buffer area 12 feet wide instead of 6 feet wide, which was shown on the original site plan. And we have included in that buffer area a second layer of plantings that will enhance the buffer aspect of that particular zone, that particular area. Now, fortunately, in order to do that, we had to move the driveway over slightly to the east. So the driveway is coming in now closer to the parking spaces in front of the building than it did in the other site plan. However, the driveway leads directly into the 5 parking spaces that are located on the west side of the building. Now, those parking spaces are still viable, although they are in a railroad-type stacked nature, because once you get in there, you can't get out unless the car behind you gets out. So the plan is that those spaces are going to be used strictly for employee parking. Now, as far as the 10 parking spaces are concerned, we have 10, we need 14 technically. Jay says that this proposed building appears to be a satellite where the additional parking may not be necessary. The board may choose to inquire what type of vehicle equipment might be stored outside the subject premises, as well as how many employees the applicant anticipates will be working at any given time. I can tell you that no vehicles, and we're willing to stipulate to this, no vehicles except an occasional passenger vehicle, but no trucks or equipment will be stored outside of this building when the building is not open and operational. Okay? Only 1 or 2 employees are going to work in the new building. Only 1 or 2. It's mostly a warehouse space for parts, tools, and product ready for sale by this company. So the 5,600 feet isn't going to be crammed with new employees. It's the same employees that work at the existing building now. This is just going to give them a chance to expand, find space for warehouse type of activities. So they don't need 14 parking spaces, is what I'm telling you. By the way, I went over there and counted today, they've got 21 or 22 parking spaces at their existing facility at 140 Avon Street, which is more than enough. Jay points out that the variance of the rear setback would likely have no significant impact on the rear property owner, which is an electrical contractor that uses the property adjacent to the subject premises as a parking lot. Tony Nazzardo's electric company is behind this property. Now, hardship. As you can see from the site plan, the lot is 141.2 feet down the westerly side, but only 123.2 feet down the easterly side. This results in a parcel which is not rectangular, but which is trapezoidal in shape. A trapezoid is a figure where 2 of the sides are the same length, but where the other 2 sides are of different lengths. Unfortunately, because of the configuration of this property as a trapezoid, it is very difficult to fit a standard rectangular light industrial building within the building envelope in a convenient manner and in a practical manner without violating some of the zoning standards, unless the size of the building is substantially reduced. And we cannot afford to substantially reduce the size of this building, a 5,600 square foot building on a 13,000 square foot lot is a reasonable request. Once again, we got a business that's been in town for 47 years, I think, and I would ask you to give it your favorable consideration. We want to keep this business in Stratford.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Hoydick.
Yeah, I see it's a 1-story building. Do you know the total height of the building?
It's going to be consistent with the 1-story building on
Come over here, Dan. Come over here. Give your name and address.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dan Polfinelli. So it'll be consistent with the building height of the first portion of our building on 140 Avon Street. So I'm not sure the exact height, but I believe the interior portion is maybe 14 feet. 14 so yeah, it's not gonna be beyond what's acceptable, and it'll be consistent with what we have.
Okay. On the 96 Avon Street side, are you going to install? I know you have the buffer. Will there be a fence there as well?
I think we have a fence indicated.
There's a fence there now. You're going to keep that same fence?
We will do whatever this board requires us to do. I thought the revised site plan had indicated on it oh no, you know what the problem is? There's a retaining wall there on that lot. Yeah, there's a retaining wall. We were going to put a 6-foot fence adjacent to those trees, and then the engineer pointed out to me that there's a retaining wall right on the property line, and that therefore a fence wasn't necessarily indicated.
So that parcel is a little higher than?
Yes, than ours.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that one.
Yeah.
In terms of the exterior of the building, will there be exterior lighting for security at night?
The exterior of this building will be very similar in design as the exterior of the building at 140. And as far as exterior lighting, the parking lot will have security lighting. It'll face away from the residential property at 96 Avon Street, low-level facing security lighting, and there'll be lighting on the front of the building.
And all the loading and unloading will be at, I would assume, an overhead door
Yeah.
in the front of the building, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Mr. DeCilio.
Mr. Knott, a question on the parking. I thought the original application with the smaller buffer still had a problem with parking because these 5 spaces, they'd have to back out, or if they backed in, they can drive out, similar to that project over on Stratford Avenue that we talked about, the pizza place, kind of unusual. Now with the added buffer, it's even more unusual. And the only reason I'm uncomfortable with this application as presented is because this particular building on this lot can be sold off. If their business changes, they can sell the 3-family and they can sell this building. So my question is this, and I'm not trying to, well, let me ask Jay if this is even feasible. Would it be reasonable to approve this conditioned upon recording a map merging these 3 properties? This way they're contiguous according to your argument, or is that out of line?
Well, they're all owned by the same people now.
Just saying, if they're going to use parking spaces over at 140 and walk over.
I mean, that's certainly possible to be done. That is possible to be done. I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill, though, for the reason is this. If you look at the parking requirements in the light industrial zone, there are essentially two requirements. One is for light industrial use. It's 1 space per 400 square feet.
Okay.
Applying that regulation to this building, we need 14 parking spaces.
Okay.
All right? The other parking regulation for light industrial use is warehouse space, where you only need 1 space per 1,000 square feet. Applying that regulation to this building, we only need 5.6, say, 6 parking spaces.
Which you have in the front.
Yeah. So, and this building is going to be used for warehouse. So the real regulation, I made this argument to Jay when I submitted the application, although I didn't get too far. But the real regulation applicable to this property is the 1 per 1,000 regulation. We really only need 6 parking spaces, and then we don't even need those because there's only going to be 2 people working in the building. And those 5 parking spaces that are difficult to get in and out of, I agree with you there. They are difficult to get in and out of. But those are going to be applicable strictly to employees if it ever becomes necessary to use them. Employees are going to go there.
And I would respond to your inquiry with me that where the properties could potentially be merged, I mean, you can apply to do anything. It would be extremely challenging to try to legally combine the lots, given the fact that you've got an industrial property, a residential property, and then another industrial property.
Well, they're all industrial. You have a pre-existing non-conforming residential structure in an industrial zone, correct?
Correct. But there would be variances because there's only one principal structure allowed on a lot.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, we'd rather not do that. Right. Thank you.
Any more questions? I have one.
Yes.
You're looking for 3 variances, 4? On this
4.
petition? 4.
4.
Was the one, I think, was eliminated because now you're providing a 12-foot buffer.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So
yeah.
you originally...
Well, if you go, I mean, as far as we're concerned, you can go with either site plan I showed you. But Jay is suggesting that you go with the one that's got the 12-foot buffer with all the trees. And we're certainly agreeable to that. If you go with that site plan, then we only need 3 variances.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no more questions. Would anybody like to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody like to speak against the petition? Hearing none, do I have a motion to close?
Motion.
Mr. DeCilio and Paul, thank you very much. Mr. Hood, if you'd like to take petition number 3 off the table.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Secretary, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott & Dunn, with offices at 1656 Main Street, Stratford. At this time, I'd like to submit the certificates of mailing, make reference to a folder of exhibits to which I will be making reference during the course of my presentation. Exhibits 1 through 7 are photographs of the subject premises, which is known as the ABC Child Care Center, currently located at 2720 Broadbridge Avenue. That's a photo from the front, Exhibit 1. Exhibit 2 is a photo also of the front showing the side of the building leading into the backyard. Exhibit 3 is another photo of the front. In this one, you can see a White House to the right of the building. That White House is located at 2720 Broadbridge Avenue, and that is the second lot, which is the subject of this application. My client purchased that property. It had been in foreclosure. It had been vacant and abandoned for a number of years. It was overgrown and dilapidated. My client bought it a couple of years ago with an idea of expanding his nursery building. Now, Exhibit 4 is a photo of the rear yard of the play area at ABC Child Care, and you note that there is AstroTurf covering the backyard. And under that AstroTurf, there's foam to keep the AstroTurf soft for the kids. That AstroTurf and foam costs $40,000. Look good in your yard, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon?
I said that AstroTurf would look good in your yard.
Yeah.
Exhibit 5, another view of the rear yard, the play area taken from the other side of the building. Exhibit 6 is a photo of the old house, which is going to be coming down. And Exhibit 7 is a photo of the rear yard to the old house. You can see back there it's all overgrown and junky. Now, Exhibit 8 is the original site plan that we submitted with the application. And the application is for the following variances: the front yard setback from 25 feet to 16.5 feet, required parking from 24 cars to 14 cars, although I'll talk more about parking in a minute. We really have 30 parking spaces. Parking in the front setback and parking within 50 feet of a residential structure. This request is being made by the applicant in order to allow him to expand an existing private school in an RS3 zone. Now, a private school is a permitted use in a residential zone, subject to special case approval. If you look at Exhibit 8, you can see from this plan that my client is seeking to expand the first floor of the existing school building by 1,252 square feet. He will also add a substantial parking lot to the site in the area where the old house currently sits, increasing the number of available parking spaces to 30. These parking spaces include 14 spaces which are located completely on my client's property, 6 spaces that are located on the north side of the existing structure, and 10 spaces located in front of the building, all 10 of which, in front, encroach slightly off of my client's property into the town right-of-way on Broadbridge Avenue. As you can see from the site plan, there is a significant area between my client's front property line and the existing curb cut on Broadbridge Avenue and the existing curb on Broadbridge Avenue, separating my client's property from Broadbridge Avenue. This area has been used by my client for ingress and egress to and from his building since the building opened in 1965. Now, Exhibit 9 is a copy of the floor plan of the proposed renovated building. I want to introduce Rick Pantano, the owner of ABC Childcare, who will take you through this floor plan and explain how the facility will work. Rick?
Hi, my name is Rick Pantano, 392 Castle Drive, Stratford. This is our proposed floor plan over here. The parent and child will enter over here, and this will be the office. They will come in, they will sign in, and depending on the age of the child will determine what class they go to. We go down this hallway here. This is going to be the 4-year-old classroom, and or they will proceed down this corridor over here to this corridor, and this will be a preschool room over here. This will be an infant room over here, and then they will continue down the corridor through this corridor here, and these will be 2 toddler rooms, and this will be another infant room. And then if they have a 3-year-old, they will be going downstairs, and there's 2 3-year-old classrooms downstairs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to give you a little history of the ABC Child Care Center. This school was started by Rick's mother, Rose Pimpinelli, in 1964. The existing building was constructed at that time specifically to be used as a school. Rick became involved in the business approximately 10 years ago and has been operating it exclusively with his staff since his mother's retirement a few years ago. ABC Child Care Center is a licensed state child care center authorized to care for up to 76 children, ages 6 weeks to 5 years. 76 kids, 6 weeks to 5 years. I mean, I don't know how they do that. The facility is one of the oldest licensed daycare facilities in the state of Connecticut. One of the oldest, one of the first that was ever licensed. With this new addition, ABC will be able to increase its authorized population from 76 to 84 children. Now that's important. With this addition, they're only going to increase the number of children by 8. 10% of their current population, they're going to increase the, so this is not a money grab where they're going to be doubling the size of their business by this addition. This is simply going to allow the facilities to be fine-tuned in a better way in order to service the number of children that they're capable of taking care of. ABC's hours of operation are from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The facility is closed on Saturday and Sunday. Nothing goes on there on Saturday and Sunday. There are currently 11 full-time employees. These include a director, an assistant director, and 9 teachers. These full-time employees work 8 hours a day in staggered shifts starting at 6:30 in the morning, with individual full-time employees arriving and departing approximately 1/2 hour apart from each other. So they don't all get there at the same time. They don't all leave at the same time. There are 18 part-time employees who work 4 4-hour shifts, also staggered throughout the day. A nurse comes in 2 days a week for 2 hours. She does a review of the medical records, checks to make sure the kids had their shots and their allergies are under control, and she inventories the medical supplies. An increase in the number of children from 76 to 84 will require the hiring of 2 new full-time employees. So there will be 2 new full-time employees. Parking is not now and will not become a problem. There is more than adequate parking spaces on this site for each of the full and part-time employees. The parents dropping off their children arrive at staggered times between 6:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. 6:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., depending upon where the mother and father work. Sometimes it's 6:30, sometimes it's 9:30, whatever. And they pick up the children at staggered times between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. The parents use the 10 spaces in front of the building as a drop-off and pick-up location. Drive in, park the car, leave the engine running. I know that because I saw somebody do it this morning when I was taking pictures over there. Bring the child in, stay for 5 and 10 minutes, make sure that everything's under control, go back in your car, go back out onto Broadbridge Avenue. Now, if you go to the ABC's website, and I recommend that you do so, and I recommend anybody here to do so, because it's remarkable, www.abcchildcarecenter.com, and click on the Facebook link. You will see extraordinarily favorable comments that ABC's receives from the families of its students. I mean, they got like a 4.9 rating out of 5 stars, 4.9 out of 5. And you can see the pictures of all of the events that take place over there. I mean, it's really an enlightening and heartening website to look at. I want to discuss Jay's administrative comments. He points out that the proposed structure complies with the setback requirements, that the new handicap ramp will need to be ADA compliant. The ramp was designed by an architect who's familiar with ADA requirements, and it was designed to meet those requirements. Jay also discusses the on-site parking situation, and he correctly points out that the addition of more parking to the site is technically feasible because the parking lot could be expanded to behind the building. If you look at the site plan, we got play area behind the building. We could make that into a parking lot if we wanted to. However, such a design would adversely impact the playground area located behind the building. Jay also points out that since there are currently 10 parking spaces in front of the building, and that the new parking added in the front setback would appear negligible. He asks what other alternatives were explored by us regarding the proposed parking lot. As far as other alternatives explored by us are concerned, our engineer and architect studied at least 4 that I saw, at least 4 different versions of a site plan before we arrived at the one that's before you tonight. Those variations included using the existing school building and the old house and putting a new building connection between the two of them. That was not a good idea. Another version had the new parking lot up against the building instead of the parking spaces being to the right as you come in the driveway. They were to the left, which left you with the driveway against the residential side of the property. None of these other alternatives worked as favorably as the ones submitted. As a condition of approval, Jay requested a new landscape plan be submitted, which complied with Section 12.12 of the zoning regulations regarding the landscape requirements. And I want to draw your attention to Exhibit 10, and I want to ask Jim Swift, our engineer, to come up because in response to Jay's request for a revised site plan, Jim has created something that addresses the landscape buffer and plantings issue. Jim?
Good evening. My name is Jim Swift. I'm a professional engineer. I'm also a licensed landscape architect in the state of Connecticut, and have offices in Shelton, Connecticut. Strictly speaking, we're not looking for Zoning Board of Appeals variances of the landscaping, but we thought that it would be a good idea to show you exactly how this is going to work and lay out, so that you could be more comfortable in the variances with our joiners. Basically, referring to the section for landscaping, we meet those criteria. There's plantings in the front, although they aren't necessarily between some of the existing parking spaces in the street, but they are there where we can do them. We're taking the existing driveway out in this location, screening the parking there, plus putting in a shade tree as required by the regulations. Another shade tree in the back. And probably the most important aspect of the landscaping is, of course, the protection of the neighbors. We have this 6-foot buffer that goes all around the outside of the property. We're proposing to plant something like an arborvitae, a very tight evergreen tree that grows to a reasonable height, 6 foot on center, all along that entire property line for that buffering. And also there's a requirement, I'm not sure if it's a requirement, but we're proposing on the plan, is a 6 foot solid white vinyl fence along this property line, which we show on this plan. And of course, the regulations require it to drop down to 4 feet in some of those early areas. So we have the room, or I think we're demonstrating the ability to plant adequate buffer.
Thank you, Jim. Jay also mentions in his comments that the playhouse in the rear is in violation of the 3-foot setback required for accessory structures. That's this building here. If you look at the site plan, it's 2.5 feet from the rear property line. It's supposed to be 3 feet from the rear property line, so Jay's correct. It is technically in violation. However, there is a Connecticut statute that states that a structure which is in violation of setback requirements for more than 3 years, where no enforcement action is initiated during that time, becomes a non-conforming use and can remain. That's Connecticut General Statutes 8-13A. So even though that thing is 2.5 feet instead of 3, because it's been there for more than 3 years and nobody has complained about it, it is allowed to remain where it currently is located. Now I want to discuss hardship. In this case, the applicant is a licensed child care center, which is a permitted use in a residential zone, subject to special case approval. We will be applying for special case approval if this variance request is approved. We may also have to submit an inland wetlands application, as there exists inland wetlands off-site significantly to the rear. Way back here, there's wetlands on somebody else's property. I think we're out of the 100-foot setback. Tina Beto didn't know when we submitted the application, so she made a notation on the application that we have to go to her to satisfy her that we either do or don't need a wetlands application, and we will conform with that. However, because we are seeking to expand the permitted use, we are limited by the adjacent land available for the expansion. In this case, my client was fortunate enough to be able to buy the adjacent house, which, as I indicated, had been in foreclosure and had been vacant for an extended period of time. His architect and engineer were able to incorporate that property into his existing site plan. The need for effective use of the existing school facility, as complemented by the additional land where the old house stood, and the need to provide security for the children, as well as the topography of the land which slopes off to the rear, represents our hardship. The application represents a valid request for a worthwhile cause. If you were to look at ABC's website and the Facebook link, which I mentioned to you, you would see that this facility provides needed and loving care for so many families in our area, and I would request its approval. So here we have a business that's been in town since 1964. 53 years, and has done very well, wants to expand. Similar to Avon Street. Those people have been in town for 43 years, doing very well, want to expand. We should be encouraging these kinds of businesses in Stratford. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Knott. Any questions? Mr. Hoyt.
Yeah, I have a few questions. If you look at the existing building on your exhibit 1 and 2, it appears that the existing parking lots, parking spaces that are available, minus the front of the building, which Jay thinks is optional, it only looks like there's 4 or 5 spots there now in terms of how they park.
That's true. There's 10 in front.
Yeah, but let's disregard the 10 in front.
All right, then down the right side of the building where you see those there's actually 4 cars parked on the right
four?
side of the building. If you go to Exhibit 2, you'll see that there's 1 car parked there, but that area will fit 6 cars.
Well, my point was more in favor of your application was that if those are adequate now, and you're going to have, and you still have the 18 part-time staff or rotating staff, then the addition of the 10 or 11 parking spaces that you're going to put in, I would think would have to be more than adequate, because what they have now is working.
Most of them are never going to be used, except by employees. The 10 spaces in front of the building are never going to be used.
Right.
Except for 3 hours in the morning when people pull in, drop off, and pull out, and 3 hours in the afternoon when they pull in. That photograph number 1, that's my car in the front of the building.
I see that.
I was the only car there until that other guy pulled in to drop off his daughter. That was at 9:20 this morning.
Another question. On the new plan, will there be any access for drop-off on the eastern side of the building, or do they still all have to drop kids off in the front?
They all have to come up the ramp, go into the building, check in at the office, sign in. That's the only place they can drop off or pick up.
So in other words, if a parent wanted to pull into the parking lot area...
And send the kid in the back?
No. And just stop there and let their child off there, they could use that side of the building as well, correct?
Well, except there's no entrance on that side of the building.
There's
Ron.
none?
No. The only entrance in and out for
Is right
purposes of dropping off kids
Okay.
is where the ramp is. And that goes right into that area adjacent to the office. Everybody's got to sign in. They want to know who's there and who's not there.
Oh, I know, that's...
By the way, 76 kids, only about 10% don't show up every day because they're sick, somebody couldn't get a ride. So you're looking at a vacancy factor of approximately 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just got,
Grega?
do you know the size of that lot where the house is now? Is it like 60 feet wide or?
There's a survey that is attached.
It's 80 by 112. 80-foot frontage and 112 feet deep.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Would anybody like to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody like to speak against it? Please come up and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Lucy Newell. I reside at 445 North Abram Street behind ABC Nursery, or behind the proposed addition.
Abram Street.
North Abram Street, behind. I would like to begin by thanking each of you for your dedicated volunteer service in our town. I just have a few concerns on the petition for ABC Nursery. I have some copies for you if you'd like. And this copy.
Do you need them back or?
Oh, no. And this is a copy of the neighbors that it pertains to. The expansion of the daycare facility would increase enrollment, as they said before, thus increasing the noise level from usually 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is a residential area. This would affect the quality of life for the neighbors that reside in the adjacent to this property, not allowing us to sit and enjoy our backyards. All the adjacent homes have at least one, if not more, seniors living at the addresses. They did go over the additional children expansion, so how many additional children would this expansion accommodate was one of my questions. And is there a requirement of how many children per square foot in a daycare? The outside PA system, we would like to be removed and no use of megaphone or sound system. Number 4, the parking lot may attract illegal activity when not in use, such as evenings and weekends, we will end up becoming the unofficial after-hours caretakers of the lot. The new parking area should be locked securely when the daycare is closed. The exhaust from the 14-plus cars in the parking lot would impact the air quality in the backyards, thus impacting our health. If the addition and the parking spaces are approved, the owner should install stockade fences and mature arborvitaes around the entire property, parking lot, and playground to buffer some of the noise. And would proper drainage be installed in the new parking area and the playground? If not, who would be responsible for the water damage from the runoff to the residents behind ABC Nursery? In addition, when it snows, can it be required that the snow be removed, not pushed to the back of ABC property, which occurs now? This would cause more water issues for the adjacent properties that already exist. The traffic at the intersection already is a burden. And if we could please ask the owner to stop harassing the residents that live behind ABC Nursery, as he has done so on numerous occasions, including recently, resulting in upsetting one of the neighbors by using foul language. This is unacceptable. He should have respect towards his neighbors. He makes money there. We live there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak against this petition? Okay. Hearing none, motion to close. Mr. Hoydick, have a second. Mr. DeCilio. Okay, and that concludes. Okay, I need a motion to close the hearing. Mr. Grega, Mr. Tavares. Okay, that's it. I'd like to take a 5-minute recess. Okay. So everybody stretch their legs. Thank you. At 8:19 p.m. Okay. Mr. Greger, would you like to take petition number 1 off the table, please?
I would like to take petition number 1 off,
That's a good idea.
1526 Stratford Avenue.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? A second by Greger and a second by DeCilio. Any discussion on this?
I just, the application is pretty clear that there's a considerable amount of wetlands on the property, forcing the building a little bit closer to Stratford Avenue, therefore requiring several of the waivers requested. So there's just an existing hardship. Also, for the record, I think Two Roads has been a good corporate citizen in Stratford. It's a great facility, and everything they seem to have done so far has been an asset to the town. So I support the application.
Okay, so we're making a...
I'd like to make a is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to add my comments. I did an on-site investigation of the properties right down the street from where I live, and I concur. It's been great for our community. We're glad to have them. One of the partners took me for a tour of the facility, and also on the back where the wetlands is. They had promised to clean it up. It's going to be aesthetically pleasing, and I'm all for it.
Okay, that's good. So we have a motion by Mr. DeCilio.
I didn't make a motion yet. That was actually discussion, but I will make a motion to approve Item number 1, 1526 Stratford Avenue, petition of two roads. Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Tavares.
You want to?
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Okay, Mr. DeCilio, petition number 2,
I'd like to take petition number 2
off the table.
off the table. 116 Avon Street, petition of James Bovinelli and Connecticut Saw and Tool LLC.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. Hoydick? Okay, any discussion?
I also did a site investigation on that property also, and the expansion of the property was much needed. They have a lot of lathes and machines in there, becomes an issue of safety. Again, this building also in the property is aesthetically pleasing with the neighborhood. One of the tenants that is in their building is also an employee, so again, great thing for Stratford, employing our own, so I think it's a good thing.
Mr. DeCilio?
And Mr. Chairman, so there were two options presented to the board. The original application, which is identified in the package as number 10, showing a 9-foot driveway so that each of the 5 parking spaces adjacent to the building can be accessed. And then there was an amended or an optional plan given to us showing a double buffer of trees, thereby creating like a railroad effect with the 5 parking places. It is my personal opinion that the option that increases the buffer, although addressing Mr. Hibansky's concerns, is a extremely poor design, and I don't know what the other board members feel, but I would be more inclined to support their original application, which is number 10, showing those parking places, people can get in and out of them.
Okay, any more discussion? Mr. Gregg, Mr. Hoyt?
No, I kind of agree with the first application too. Submitted to us, number 10, I believe it was. It's a lot easier, cars, the bushes grow and stuff, and
Correct, yeah.
it's a lot easier to get in.
Can I make a point of order? The first site plan is Exhibit 8. The revised site plan is Exhibit 10. I think you're talking about Exhibit 8, Dave.
And this is 11. 11 is the one with the double trees.
All we have to do, if the original site plan submitted with the application is what you folks would like, you don't have to stipulate that it's
Okay.
Exhibit 8. You can just say the original site plan that was submitted with the application.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Well, I would be in favor of Exhibit 10, or the
The
original.
original
plan.
site plan.
Yep,
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a
Okay.
motion.
Motion
approve.
to the original site
The
plan.
original site plan.
Okay.
And I will
There's a
second the motion
Mr.
to approve.
DeCilio.
The original.
All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Tavares, go ahead.
We're talking about Exhibit 10?
Yeah.
The original? Okay.
Okay. All the, Mr.
Just a couple of conditions that I know that were potentially discussed and agreed upon by the applicant, and I just wanted to make sure that, if I know they were discussed, the no trucks or equipment stored outside during when business is not in operation, that was potentially discussed. And also the planning and zoning office is going to need actually no, if we're going with the original site plan, then we don't need any revised sets, so.
Just putting the steps that no equipment or trucks to be stored outside when they're not open for business.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. DeCilio.
So, Mr. Chairman, just so I understand how we actually amend a motion, do I withdraw my second, or do we just amend it?
Friendly amendment.
Make a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
I'm sorry?
Uses that as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
I will finally amend Mr. Greg's motion to approve to cite that the condition of the approval will be with no trucks stored outside of the establishment during
Or equipment.
non-business
Or
hours.
Or equipment.
Or equipment.
Okay, now we have a motion with a friendly amendment. Do we have a friendly vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. And Mr. Hoyt, number 3.
Sure. Application number 3, 2720 to 2740 Broadbridge Avenue, petition of ABC Nursery LLC, seeking waivers of the front setback, required parking spaces, parking in front setback, and parking within 50 feet of a residential structure to expand an existing private school in an RS3 district. Their hardship is effective use of land, topography, and security.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll make the motion to take it
Do we
up.
have a motion? Do we have a second? Mr. Greger. Okay, any discussion? Mr. DeCilio.
Yes, so there was one of our neighbors came with a list of issues, and I think there were 2 of those issues that stuck out in my head as important. One of them, and I don't know because the public hearing is closed how this is required, but a PA speaker system or megaphone sound system outside for the children. I don't know if there's a state requirement or some sort of mandate for that, but that seems a little bit, that would upset me if I lived behind it. How's that? And secondly, I did notice on the plan that they called for 4 to 5 foot arborvitaes, which were a little bit tiny. It's going to take 25 years for those to grow. So the neighbors concern and said stockade fence plus 8 foot arborvitaes, I believe, is a reasonable size plant. I think there's 7 to 8 is what they sell.
And I know that they also mentioned around the entirety of the property, and I'm not sure if that's included in some of your concerns.
Well, I just wanted to bring up those concerns and see how my fellow board members felt on either of those.
Okay. Mr. Greger?
Yeah, I also have a concern with, as the neighbor did too, with the water runoff. And I don't know if you can secure the parking lot when it's off hours. I don't know the legalities of that, if it could be secured. That was one of her concerns. But water runoff, are they going to catch it and pipe it somewhere, or rainwater, snow water?
Well, during the permit process, it would go before the building department, the engineering department, and they would make sure that the development of that lot complies with all stormwater runoff catchment systems. So if we wouldn't have those details in our plans, but that would be something that the project wouldn't be able to move forward unless it's meeting all building and engineering codes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or concerns? I agree with Mr. DeCilio. Those 6-foot trees are too small. Maybe we can have 8-foot trees put in there, or either the whole perimeter or just part where they say. We put that in as a stipulation. That's right, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, if, it sounds like you folks would like the 8-foot arborvitaes. Do we want that along the entirety of the property as the abutting property owner suggested, or only in the sections where that landscaping buffer was provided on the plan?
Okay. Mr. DeCilio?
No, okay, so Jay, it's proposed on the plan to be down the right side and around the rear of the lot they just purchased. And you just said what?
The abutting property owner who spoke suggested that the arborvitae or landscaping buffer be provided along the entirety of the property, all along the back, because I believe it stops at some point.
Right. Well, the entirety would encompass also the left side, which is pre-existing. I don't think that's reasonable. But certainly along the rear, anything parallel to Broadbridge Avenue, so the whole back would be very reasonable.
So 8 foot along
As
where
long as it's
proposed.
not, I don't know how you put it in AstroTurf, if the AstroTurf is all the way to the fence, but maybe, I think you only need a couple of feet anyway.
Correct.
Okay, do we have a motion to
Okay, I'm sorry, Jay.
There's a couple other things. The Planning and Zoning Office would like a full-size copy of the landscaping plan to be submitted to the office for this file. Another thing for the playhouse structure, assuming that the structure has been there over 3 years, it does comply with the state statute, but we do need proof of that. I mean, if they've got a receipt that shows when they purchased it, they can look at satellite imagery that's on the GIS, that they can easily prove that to us. So I would like that as well. And let's see, there were some other things that were discussed. You may want to stipulate that the applicant should not apply for zoning or building permits until the Conservation Administrator confirms that Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission approvals have been in place or that they don't need them. And about the PA system, that I don't know. You could waive the rules to allow the applicant, if they're still here, to explain if that's some state requirement. I don't know. Do you want to waive the rules first?
Yes, waive the rules or a point of order?
Yeah, point of order. We have no problem with that stipulation. The PA system has been out of operation for a number of years already.
Okay, so no PA system. Mr. Florek, you had your hand up?
So that you were going to place a condition on the application that there not be an outdoor PA system, is that correct?
I know it was discussed, and I'm just trying to run over all the potential conditions.
I was just ensuring that you weren't seeking to reopen the public hearing.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. DeCilio.
I'd like to offer a motion to approve item number 3, 2720, 2740 Broadbridge Avenue, subject to the following conditions. 1, no outside PA speaker system to be installed, and if there's one existing, it's to be inoperable or removed, and no megaphone or sound system to be used outside. That will allow for the peaceful enjoyment of the neighbors' residential properties. The second condition is that the applicant, within 30 days, submit to the Planning and Zoning Commission a modified stamped landscape plan showing 8-foot arborvitae trees or equivalent along the northern and, southern and western, so rear property line and the right property line, which I believe is the northern property line. Thank you, Ron, help me out here. And the third condition would be that they confirm before a building permit is issued that there's no need for an inland wetlands application and there's no inland wetlands within the regulated area. There's none of this site is within the regulated area of inland wetlands.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. DeCilio, second by Mr. Hoydick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay. Need a motion to approve the minutes in January?
So
Mr.
moved.
Hoyt? Mr. Hoyt, do I have a second? Mr.
Second.
Gregor? Okay, anything else? That's it. Motion to adjourn?
No, well, can we vote on that motion first? All in favor?
Oh, all in favor, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
all, second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you very much.